Good morning, gentlemen. Let's get cracking on the Middle East. I've got out of my hangover of Sri Lanka, wonderful place, wonderful people, and very hot girls, I'll say that. And now I come down to the Middle East. The Middle East, gentlemen, there have been tremendous, or I would say tumultuous, events that have shaken the world. And the biggest of them is the collapse of Syria. Now, Syria, I'll tell you, was a state which was governed by the Assad family for the last 54 years. The father of President Assad took over Syria in 1970 and he ruled for 30 years before he passed away, and then his son took over. But the son, I think, was not as astute, as shrewd as his daddy, and he let Syria down. And in 24, the situation was very bad. He'd made total enmity with Israel. Turkey was not his friend. And he thought he would be having the support of Russia and Iran and he'll sail through. It's not so easy. The Iranians had a big interest there in Syria. They were supplying weapons from there to Hezbollah. And then they were also supplying weapons to Hamas. Kept the point boiling. They were supplying weapons to Houthis. And unfortunately for Assad, the Syrian National Army, which was consisting of his opponents, began to gain ground. And somehow I have a feeling that the Russians could not intervene in their full force because they're tied down in Ukraine. And Iran on its own didn't have the military power to come over and take control of the battle in Syria. Because they, as it is, they're pretty scared of the Americans, The Americans do something and Iran may cease to exist. So, gentlemen, the situation was bad for Assad. And first of all, I think he had been ruling like an autocrat. He was living a luxurious life. The way he lived in his palaces and the amount of cars and all he had. And then he was a very ruthless man who had put so many people in prison and they were torturing them. I think his days were numbered. And once the Syrian army, lost interest, or rather lost heart in fighting the rebels, he had no option but to flee from there. I think he went in a secret tunnel or something, went in a helicopter, and then has landed in Moscow, where he's been given asylum by Vladimir Putin. Now, I think this will be the first thing that matters is that it's a Russian defeat. As I told you, Russia couldn't intervene inside Syria, basically because the Russians were tied down in Ukraine. I'll discuss that later. And the second point is, his second ally, that is Iran, didn't have the wherewithal or the power to intervene there without Russian intervention. Russians got two bases in Syria. I think their future is now in jeopardy. And sooner than later, I think Vladimir Putin likely cut short and go back. Now, who are the people who organized all this? That's also important. I think at the pivot is Israel. Israel is one of the most determined nations which has come up. And after the 1939-1945 Second World War, where 60 lakh Jews were gassed to death by Adolf Hitler, the Israelis have realized that pacifism doesn't pay. And this is something Narendra Modi must also realize, that trying to be correct all the time and having a pacifist approach is not going to help India at all. And India, although facing a great danger like Israel, with a jihadist mindset facing them in two nations, that is Pakistan and Bangladesh. We'll discuss about that later. But the moment, as far as the Middle East is concerned, is a state of ferment, and Saudi Arabia, of course, has not gone along with Turkey and other people. They kept their cool. They are not with Syria at all. And probably, if they have some sympathies, it will be with Israel. Saudi are very shrewd people. I think they were a wonderful leader in Mohammed bin Salman. Is leading Saudi Arabia forward. And he knows that there was a challenge to the Saudi leadership from Iran and Turkey. And Iran, of course, now has its backbone broken. I remember going through a video broadcast once where President Assad had gone to Iran and said, the Turks are trying to throw me out, so can you help me? And the Iranians had promised that we'll talk to Turkey about it. In such things, talking has no meaning. It's got to be the military strength. And Turkey borders Syria, while Iran has got no border with Syria. They got to go through Iraq. And so there was a handicap. And secondly, as I told you, the Iranian military doesn't have the capability to go and fight a battle hundreds of miles away. They were good enough if they can defend themselves, where also they're likely to fail, because Donald Trump is now breathing on their neck. Now, this program was organized, I think, by Israel, and the United States gave wholehearted support, and Turkey saw the opportunity of throwing away the Assad regime, which they didn't like at all, and net result is that Assad has had to flee the country. He's been a little short-sighted. Had he been a little more pragmatic, kept peace with Israel, signed the Abraham Accord, he would have survived. I think he didn't realize that everything is not honky-dory the way you see it. You got to see how the world looks at it, how it is. And Hindi में कहावत है कि मगरमच्छ के साथ वैर नहीं करते पानी में. You don't fight an alligator in the water, because that is the habitat of the alligator. The Israelis are all over, and I think he should have signed the Abraham Accord. He would have survived. But now he has decided on going on a different path. He thought the Russians are all powerful, they're going to help him. But Russia strike down in the Ukraine. And China also was fishing there, but Chinese can only do fishing. There's nothing much they can do. The Chinese haven't fought a war since 1979, when they were defeated by the North Vietnamese, that is Vietnamese. I say the word defeated because the Chinese didn't achieve anything. It's a stalemate. But if such a big army goes into battle and can't win anything, it's a defeat. So China knows it's got limitations. And then they have their problems with the 7th Fleet. And I don't think they have anything to match that. Coming back to this war here, Assad, of course, is now safe, ensconced in Moscow. I believe he had purchased a lot of property there, taken a lot of gold and gone there. But kab tak rahega? What long? You see, Russia is a dictatorship. You don't know tomorrow what will happen. If Putin goes, Assad may very well be sent packing from there. It's quite possible. They're not a democracy like the Americans. If they stand by you, they stand by you. But this is not the case with the Russians. Coming back now to the situation in the Middle East, the Israelis are the biggest gainers of this battle. They have confiscated the Golan Heights. They have also taken the area, the buffer zone, which was being policed by the United Nations, and they've gone up, and I believe they're just about 25 or 30 miles from Damascus, the capital of Syria. ये बहुत बड़ी victory है. And now the Americans are seeing something else. They think that it's better to finish off the terrorist organization, and they've launched a massive bombing attack on the Houthis in Yemen with their stealth bombers. They are using bunker-breaking bombs, and I think the Houthis have been totally surprised by this, because these bombers can penetrate 20 feet of concrete, and whatever the Houthis had built underground have been, I think, hit and destroyed. Now the question is, what's going to happen in the Middle East? We have the UAE, very pragmatic leadership, doing very well. Saudi Arabia, similarly, more inclined to sign the Abraham Accord. Hamas is finished. Much of the Gaza Strip has been occupied by Israel. There are reports that there have been 50,000 casualties, could be even more. But then, let's not forget the fact that who started this? This carnage was started by the Hamas when they launched those 10,000 rockets against Israel. It was wonderful planning, but then they didn't have any follow-up. You see, no backup. And there was no second strike, and the Israelis could regroup and attack. And even now they have, I think, tens of their hostages there, which is again not the way war should be fought. Taking hostages was something with the Nazis and the Gestapo used to do. I don't see why the terrorist organizations in the Middle East should do it, because Hamas and Hezbollah don't claim to be terrorist organizations. If they say claim, if they don't claim, to be terrorist organizations. Why the hell are they acting like terrorist organizations in taking hostages? दोस्तों ये एक बहुत ही important point है. And now as things stand, I think the situation is now in the favor of Israel and Americans as far as the Middle East is concerned. इस वक्त American influence would be very high because the world would have realized कि American power बहुत जबरदस्त चीज है. जिस तरीके से उन्होंने bombing किया है यमन की, I think it is an eye opener that what sort of weapons the Americans can use. And the Russians have been comparatively lost. Ukraine में भी उनकी कोई खास performance नहीं रही है. I'll talk about the Ukraine conflict later. But इस वक्त everybody is waiting for Donald Trump when he takes oath in the 20th of January. As far as Biden is concerned, he's fighting for his place in history. These are the last days, the last days of Pompeii, when Pompeii was destroyed by the volcano, that is the Etna volcano. So it's like that. It's the last days of Biden. He wants to make a mark, and he's trying every little thing to do something. He's tried his stunts in Bangladesh. He's tried his stunts in Pakistan. And he's wants to live down that infamous retreat from Afghanistan. And he's trying all his stunts in Ukraine. And he has also given Ukraine the power to go and hit any hinterland territory military target inside Russia. And now he's backed Israel fully. I don't know what's been the role of Turkey. Probably Turkey also wanted Assad out, no doubt about it. But they didn't expect the Israelis to advance so much. And now they are quite angry. But being angry has got no meaning. The only way you can push the Israelis back is by having a war with Israel. And would Turkey be capable of a war with Israel? I don't think they're going to do it. Erdogan knows that it's going to give him a bloody nose. And that means the Americans will come on the side of Israel. And Erdogan's army doesn't have that capability, the capacity to continue fighting. It can only keep the pot boiling, make some speeches against India and the United Nations. I think that's what he can do. But Turkey is not a global power, let's accept it. It's not even a power to reckon with in the Middle East, where we have Saudi Arabia and Egypt vying for top honors as military leaders. I think Iran would be the country that would be really worried now. Really worried, because Syria has lost. Their contact with Hezbollah is lost. Hezbollah very soon will be wiped out. And they're going to have a tough time in Iraq also. And the Americans, let's be very frank now, after having finished up Syria, are going to think of just finishing Iran. Donald Trump, of course, has been very pragmatic. He said we have nothing to do with Syria. Syria is not our friend. Forget about it. But I don't think the Americans forget anything like that. There's a deep state in America which controls a lot of things, and Donald Trump will have to fight it. He's trying to strike a fresh path, and I think his racist invitation to President Xi to come down to attend his oath-taking ceremony is something which is out of the book. We'll have to wait and see what's Trump's plan, because he's got only 4 years. I made a video earlier. He's got only 4 years at his disposal, and he's got to do something drastic in that, or change the American Constitution, which gives it unlimited terms like Putin or Xi, but that's not going to happen in America. So he better be on his toes. At the same time, I will say the Israelis are doing very well. They copied the world, and it's an example to India that you cannot just keep roaring and not biting. Narendra Modi is just doing that. We should have acted a long time back on Bangladesh. We Indians didn't do it. Modi is sitting on the fence, probably a little scared what to do, what's going to happen. And sitting on the fence means sitting like Humpty Dumpty. And if you keep sitting like Humpty Dumpty, you have a fall and you break your head. So Narendra Modi should be very, very careful. I think not to antagonize the Americans. The Americans, I don't think, very happy with India. And जैसे मैंने आपको बताया है, America is not the friend of India, and that's a fact. So then what happens next? Next is India must be careful and not go the way of Bangladesh, Pakistan, and now Syria. As far as Syria is concerned, I think the battle is very clear. Israelis are on the upper hand, and उनको जो उनके aim थे, they have achieved them. They are just 30 miles from Damascus. टर्की जो है डर रहा है उनको अटैक करने के लिए. तो टर्की नहीं चाहता कि Israel should remain in Syria. They have got the backing of America, और डोनाल्ड ट्रंप अभी आने के लिए टाइम है. और उससे पहले Joe Biden is trying to make his name in world history. And let's see if he can make it. And this is one of his actions which he has taken, trying to erase the ignominy of Afghanistan. And Iran should be worried because उनकी backbone टूट गई है. Russia is defeated. So the world is changing. And Assad बहुत बड़ी गलतियां कर चुके हैं. He should have made peace with Israel, signed the Abraham Accords, नहीं किया, and he's paying the price for it. अभी वो exile में है, मॉस्को में, पर you never know what's going to happen. रशिया एक डिक्टेटरशिप है, and कभी भी वो अगर जरूरत पड़ी या कोई ऐसी चीज हुई, वो असाद को they can sacrifice him any time. Gentlemen, मैं अभी बंद करता हूँ. I hope you have liked my video. आप शेयर करिए अपने दोस्तों के साथ and like it, and I look forward to your subscriptions also. More and more लोग सब्सक्राइब करें मुझे. I am glad कि मेरी सब्सक्रिप्शन बेस बढ़ रहा है, 5,000 से ऊपर हो गया, but that is too less. I still feel more people should join me, and I will now close now and say goodbye. God bless, and last but not the least, Jai Hind, glory.